What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we're going to be comparing the new Pixel 8 Pro to the also still somewhat new iPhone 15 Pro. Now, these two Pro smartphones are basically the top tier flagship devices from Google and from Apple. And I know there's always a sort of stigma when comparing an Android device to an iPhone, but if we were to take Google's word for it, they feel as though the Pixel is what iPhone users should be switching to. And I do feel like a lot of people will be deciding between these two phones this year, especially if you value things like camera specs, lots of software updates, and overall performance. Now, at a glance, these two phones couldn't be more different. Obviously, the Pixel 8 Pro is quite a bit bigger than the iPhone for starters. It's a 6.7-inch device, the iPhone comes in at 6.1 inches, and I know a lot of people will be saying I should have compared the Pixel to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Perhaps that's a more fair comparison based on size, but there isn't a smaller or a larger Pixel Pro, so it's not quite a one-to-one comparison, but I get the argument. In addition to a bigger screen size, the Pixel also, in my opinion, has a nicer design. The iPhone has the big dynamic island notch at the top, which is functional, kind of, but takes up some of the screen real estate. They both have pretty slim bezels all around, though. On the back, both phones, of course, have that super premium build. Glass cover on both is a frosted matte finish, but the metal frame differs quite a bit. The Pixel is actually a polished aluminum, while the iPhone, of course, is Apple's heavily advertised titanium material. To me, though, metal is metal is metal. Titanium versus aluminum versus stainless steel doesn't really impact the usability of the device at all. Visually, some people might prefer that polished jewelry look of the Pixel or the rugged industrial look of the iPhone. You may or may not hate fingerprints, but all of this is totally inconsequential to the actual features and functionality of the phones. Same goes for their big old camera bumps around back. The Pixel has the unique camera bar, the iPhone has a triple lens camera bulge. The camera specs differ quite a bit, of course, but the design and placement are nothing more than creative choices. I will just say that in the hand, even though the Pixel is significantly larger from top to bottom and side to side, it feels thinner and lighter by comparison, even though it's technically not. The slim sides of the Pixel come to a thinner edge than the iPhone, and on a weight to size scale, the Pixel is actually lighter than the 15 Pro Max, and not that much heavier than this 15 Pro, even though it's half an inch larger. Taking a quick look around at the rest of the physical bits, on the left side of the iPhone, you'll see the new action button and volume buttons. On the right side of the Pixel, you'll see the physical SIM card tray, which actually is important to mention. The iPhone, at least here in the US, does not have a physical SIM slot anymore. It's eSIM only. The Pixel supports both eSIM and physical SIM cards still, so for traveling or overall convenience, that's definitely a perk of the Pixel. On the right side, both phones have their respective power buttons, along with volume buttons on the Pixel. There's a couple 5G antennas on both phones in various spots. On the bottom, these phones are now identical, with USB-C ports on both in the middle, flanked by a couple speaker and microphone cutouts. Selfie cameras and secondary speakers are up there at the top on both, and around back, like I mentioned, very different camera setups. To keep my new Pixel 8 Pro all shiny and safe, by the way, I've been using these leather cases from Bellroy, this video's sponsor. Bellroy's leather cases are slim and sleek, but offer all the protection you'd want. They're also constructed from an ethically sourced, top-grain leather, so they look great and give off a luxurious and premium vibe. The three colors I have here are Simply Taupe, Slate Blue, and Terracotta, my personal favorite. They pop on the phone with ease, and you can see that all the important bits are fully covered. There's a raised lip all around the screen and an extra edge around the camera bump around back, and the inside of the case is a super soft microfiber to keep that polished finish looking nice. Bellroy even worked closely with Google to design this case to pair perfectly with the phone, so it's the exact fit with precisely measured cutouts all around. It's slim and minimal. It's pretty much the perfect case pairing for the Pixel 8 Pro. Bellroy's cases are constructed from a recycled plastic at their core, which helps keeps its shape and also provides some impact protection in the event of a fall. And the outer layer is that premium high quality leather. evenly dyed for perfect color, and sourced from gold-rated tanneries, certified by the Leather Working Group. This high-quality material is made to last and will eventually show that unique aged leather look that a lot of people love. Bellroy's leather cases deliver it all when it comes to style, quality, and protection, and I personally don't know of any better leather case on the market than these. Click the link in the video description below to get 10% off any of Bellroy's products. Now, when it comes to biometrics and security, the Pixel 8 Pro has an in-display fingerprint reader that can be used for unlocking the device and confirming your identity for apps and payments. The iPhone, of course, hasn't had a fingerprint sensor in years, it's all Face ID, but this year, the Pixel 8 Pro also has a new facial recognition system that for the first time can be used for identity confirmation. The Pixel still just uses the selfie camera. There's no additional sensors like the iPhone's Face ID system, but Google says the Pixel's facial recognition setup achieves the high level of security required to verify apps and payments. Another thing that's new to the Pixel, and also unique to this device specifically, is a temperature sensor, basically a sort of thermometer. On the back of the Pixel, near the camera setup, there's a new sensor that in theory can measure the approximate temperature of all sorts of objects. When you point it at something and tap the measure button in the new thermometer app, the phone will give you a reading, and in my experience, it's not really that accurate, and it also isn't approved to be used for taking your own temperature or the temperature of other living things, but it is an interesting addition to this phone, and not something the iPhone or really any other device even offers. When it comes to the viewing experience, there are some other screen differences here besides the size. Both phones offer LTPO OLED panels, so they're the bright, colorful, and vibrant looking displays you'd expect from flagship phones. But resolution-wise, interestingly enough, the Pixel actually has the much sharper display, even though it's larger. With a resolution of 2992 by 1344, the Pixel 8 Pro packs in some 489 pixels per inch with its 6.7-inch screen. The iPhone, on the other hand, has a slightly better than 1080 resolution 6.1-inch screen at 2556 by 1179, or about 461 pixels per inch. What this means is that if you want to look really closely at each display, the Pixel is technically going to look sharper. But to be honest, this is one of those specs that's nice to say you have, but that the average person probably couldn't pick out. Both these phones do look really nice, and you aren't going to be seeing any pixels either way. They're both 120Hz variable refresh rate displays as well, so both visually and with your taps and swipes, the screen should look and feel super smooth and fluid. The other difference actually is with brightness, and in particular the maximum auto brightness capabilities. The iPhone 15 Pro can reach 1000 nits of max brightness, the user control toggle, and up to 2000 nits with auto brightness enabled in outdoor conditions. The Pixel 8 Pro takes things even further with up to 1600 nits of user-controlled brightness and 2400 nits of peak auto brightness. Now, it's sort of tough to show on camera, but in person, the Pixel is absolutely the brighter display. And this is interesting because this year, the extra brightness is new to the Pixel, while last year, Apple upped the max brightness on the iPhone 14 Pro, but didn't change it this year. So the Pixel sort of leapt ahead. And honestly, considering the resolution difference and the size too, I do think the Pixel has the better viewing experience overall. Spec for spec, it's just the better display, and if that's something that's most important to you, I think the Pixel is the winner there. For your out loud listening experience, both phones offer a dual speaker setup. There's a single speaker at the bottom and then a secondary speaker hidden in the earpiece. And honestly, I can't really hear much of a difference between the two phones myself, but here's a sound sample from each so you can decide. As far as specs and performance, I'll be honest, this is always sort of a tough comparison because we're literally comparing apples to Androids. And there's not exactly a fair or straightforward way to do that, but I'll still give you the info and also offer some of my thoughts. Now inside, each phone has very different specs, but they actually are the in-house components designed by Apple and Google. The Pixel 8 Pro has Google's new Tensor G3 chip and 12 gigabytes of RAM, while the iPhone 15 Pro is powered by Apple's latest A17 Pro CPU and 8 gigabytes of RAM. On paper, the iPhone's processor is more powerful than any other smartphone chip, just based on the various measurable performance scores. And what Apple has going for them is they also control the software as well. iOS, and the third-party apps available to the iPhone. We know Apple has strict standards there. So the iPhone is and has always been optimized for performance, both with Apple's own internals and with the software experience. But Google, the last few years, has taken a similar approach with their own Tensor chips, and obviously, Android is Google's operating system, so on the Pixel especially, they have a lot more control over the software, with optimization and the overall user experience. I'm actually of the opinion that there is no better Android-specific device to buy than a Pixel, because you get the updates first, you get tons of Google and Android-specific features, and if there's an Android device out there that should run the best overall, it probably would be the Pixel. And this year, Google is also more committed to longevity. They're now promising 7 years of major Android updates for the Pixel 8 Pro, which is as good or better than what Apple offers on their devices. So now you can add software support as a solid tally in the Pixels column, and it's no longer something specific to Apple. Besides that stuff, obviously the whole iOS versus Android thing is just going to come down to personal preference. But across the board, these two phones are essentially the most powerful and most supported devices from their respective manufacturers. When it comes to battery life and charging, the first important thing to mention here is that this year, the iPhone now has a USB-C port, just like basically every other Android phone on the market for like the last 6 or 7 years. So the charging port and cables you use to plug these phones in are exactly the same, which feels kind of weird to say. The battery sizes are very different though. Naturally, the bigger Pixel 8 Pro has the bigger battery inside, a little more than 5,000 milliamps compared to the 3,200 milliamp battery in the iPhone. Though that big battery size is canceled out a bit by the bigger screen, which draws more power. And probably most interesting, neither of these phones actually charge all that quickly. The iPhone supports a maximum of 30 watt wired and 15 watt wireless via MagSafe, and the Pixel also maxes out at 30 watt wired and 23 watt wireless. Though some of the power features are different, obviously. The iPhone has all those MagSafe accessories, the Pixel has reverse wireless charging, so it can actually charge, like the iPhone for example, off its back, and in day-to-day use, this is sort of dependent on your actual smartphone habits, but I found the Pixel can last a little longer throughout the day and also has more options for extending the battery life, various low power modes, more transparency in its optimization and usage. Though to be totally honest, compared to a lot of other Android devices that have bigger battery sizes and much faster charging speeds, neither one of these phones offers any particularly unique or interesting power features. Last but not least, I think the most talked about feature on both these phones are their respective camera setups, and everything from the hardware to the shooting modes, and even the pictures themselves are quite different. Around back, the Pixel's camera bar houses a 50 megapixel main lens, 48 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 48 megapixel ultra wide with a 10.5 megapixel selfie camera up front. The iPhone has a 48 megapixel main shooter, but a 12 megapixel telephoto lens and 12 megapixel ultra wide with a 12 megapixel selfie camera up front. Inside the camera app, I want to talk about a few specific features and capability differences first that I think are most important. The Pixel 8 Pro has the better zoom capabilities. 5x optical using the telephoto lens, and up to 30 times digital. The iPhone has just 3x optical zoom and 15x digital, and if you want better zoom on the iPhone, you'll actually have to instead opt for the Pro Max. As far as some of the other shooting modes and features, the phones actually have similar capabilities, they're just sort of called different things. Night mode versus night sight, cinematic blur versus cinematic mode. I personally feel as though the Pixel tends to have more features packed inside the camera app with additional options like long exposure, but I'll talk more about those specific camera differences in a dedicated camera comparison video. As for some real world results, what's what's most interesting to me is that while the iPhone this year seems to capture duller, more true-to-life looking images with less vibrant colors compared to years past, they're still more saturated than what the Pixel produces. Though arguably, the Pixel still seems to capture more detail in every shot. But again, I'll have a more in-depth camera comparison video on the channel soon that really dives deep into the camera differences between these two phones. I do think they're both pretty much the best picture takers on the market though, once again this year. In my opinion, the Pixel 8 Pro is probably the best Android device you can buy, just based on the combination of specs, software, and camera capabilities. The iPhone is, well, the iPhone. There's nothing really to compare it to necessarily other than an Android phone, and between these two, the choice is definitely tough. Spec for spec, I think the Pixel may have an advantage on paper. But what do you guys think? Which device would you rather have? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.